Hello, this video is my review of Dehancer, the plugin I use to give the final look to the video Why. This review is not intended to be a deep dive into Dehancer, as I'm new to the plugin and I've not wanted to use film emulation software in the past. I thought it would be useful to my viewers to describe my experience of using the software as a complete newbie, and not one who is drawn to the nostalgia of the film look. I want to give more of a big picture overview, just so you can get an idea of what Dehancer can do and whether or not it's of any use to you. I will be showing Dehancer using DaVinci Resolve, but you can access various versions of Dehancer for PC and Mac, for both video and photo applications. And there's also an iPhone app. I will be following this review up with a separate review of Dehancer for Lightroom or Photoshop, as well as covering the iPhone version of Dehancer in that review. So a disclaimer, Dehancer did reach out to me to see if I would do a review in exchange for a software license, but they have no editorial oversight in what I publish about their software. So before I use Dehancer to create the final look, it's important to normalize the footage. This is a standard process where you color adjust the footage and stills being used in the video to look normal or neutral. This gives your footage a solid base from which to apply a final color grade or look. I've put a few definitions on screen of terms I'll be using throughout this presentation. So here is my project on the edit page of DaVinci Resolve. The edit page uses a layer-based system, and I have separate layers for visuals such as my video footage and stills, for titles, and also audio layers that cover things such as background music and voiceover. The top layer is an adjustment layer that applies to all of the layers beneath, and that is where I have applied the Dehancer plugin. I can show the effect of the Dehancer software by turning this layer on and off as I go through the timeline and show different clips. I could also have applied Dehancer in the color page, and this would have allowed me to view the color scopes and levels to analyze the tones as I adjusted them. But the edit page is a more straightforward way to illustrate Dehancer's features. So here we are with a blank adjustment layer. To apply the Dehancer plugin, I go to the Effects tab, search for Dehancer, and simply drag and drop it on the adjustment layer. So by default, the plugin applies with some effects already activated, such as film grain and one of the Kodak film looks already applied. I can illustrate this by switching Dehancer on and off with this button at the top of the panel, and I'll be doing this a lot as I develop the look for the project. On the Input tab, the source has been set to Rec 709, and there's quite a variety of input color spaces to choose from. For the purposes of this video, it's enough to say that Rec 709 is a standard color space for rendering high definition video, and this is the color space that my timeline has been set to. My approach to Dehancer, and one I suggest to newbies like me, is to start by switching off all of the Dehancer effects and just starting from blank canvas. That way you can trial each effect in isolation and only use the ones that you really want or that apply to your final look you're going for. Open all of the Dehancer effect panels by holding down the Alt or the Option key and clicking the small arrow to the left of an effect. This will open or close all Dehancer effects. So once all the effects panels are open, go through and uncheck the enabled box. So now that I've switched everything off, I'll switch each effect on that I want, one at a time, in order of importance to the final look that I'm going after. Before I do that, I'll show you film profiles. So if you enable this option, you have over 60 film emulations to choose from, which can be a bit overwhelming if you don't know where to start. So best to play around and note down the film looks that you like. The push-pull slider refers to an analog process where the film was over or underdeveloped, depending on whether you thought you might have underexposed or overexposed the film. It's similar to adjusting exposure, but not quite the same. First, I want some film grain to distract from the clean digital look. So I'm going to choose 65mm ISO 500 as it's a reasonably subtle grain. Next, I enable film compression. This mimics the way film handles bright or overexposed areas. So in digital captures, overexposure tends to show up more abruptly, whereas in film, the transition to overexposure is much more subtle. In effect, more of the highlights get shifted towards the midtones. There are a number of adjustment sliders in film compression to tweak the effect, and the documentation on the Dehancer website gives very clear explanations of what each slider does, so I won't go into the details in this video. Suffice to say, you have a lot of control over how film compression is applied. Another very effective way I've found to get help on specific effects is to use an AI tool such as Perplexity. So just type in something like, what does film compression do in Dehancer Pro? And you'll get a very good bullet point summary along with links to the sources that were used. I like to look at each effect over different clips. It's important to see how the effect looks over a variety of lighting conditions. For the Y project, I needed to get a feel of how the effect was manifesting in videos shot at sunrise, on completely overcast days, and even in interiors that were using artificial lighting. Next, I want to enable Expand to set my black and white points. This is one way of affecting the contrast of the look being developed. Now to address bloom and halation, two optical effects that occur with film. Bloom simulates the soft glow that occurs around bright areas, and halation is the reddish-orange halos that appear around bright light sources. Of these two effects, bloom is the one that helps my developing look the most. Vignette is next on my list. I want to darken the edges of the image to draw the viewer in. I find Vignette can make flat lighting also look more interesting as well. To finish off my look, I found that by applying a film look at this final stage helped finish off the overall look. It's subtle, but just reduce the color palette a little more and raise the gamma or midtone. So I chose Kodak Ektachrome, which is a reasonably neutral slide film I have used in the past. I use the push-pull slider to affect the overall lightness of the image. Now that I've finished my settings, let's have a look at a few before and after previews from different clips in the video. So some effects that I haven't used but are worth showing are film damage, overscan, and gateweave. So using these would be a really effective way to do flashbacks in a video project, or just emphasize that some footage that you're showing is from the past. A setting worth mentioning is that right at the bottom of the Dehancer screen, you have the option settings. And here you can optimize the processing to emphasize either speed or quality. But I did find the quality of the renders was just fine under the fast option. However, if you're doing a project where maximum quality is very important, it might be worth experimenting with the maximum quality settings. There's also a button that you can check which will check profiles, it'll check whether any film profiles have been updated or if there's new ones to download. So in this review, I've deliberately stayed away from explaining each and every setting and discussing the various color management workflows that Dehancer can work under. There's a wealth of detail on the Dehancer website, and there's plenty of other videos online if you really want to get down into the weeds. The thing is also that you can use this plugin straight out of the box simply by switching the effects on and off and adjusting the sliders until you get the effect or the intensity of the effect that you're after. Even just using one of the 60+ film profiles could give you the exact look that you're after. I would argue that the craft of photography is more about what you take away from a composition than what you add to a composition. The less is more approach. And in that sense, Dehancer is a powerful tool for reducing your color palette and stylizing your work to evoke an emotional response from a viewer. While I love being a photographer in the digital age, I find that the work can start to look a bit too clean, a little bit overproduced. And Dehancer is a great way to reintroduce a bit of grit, a bit of organic feel to your work. So is it worth the price? Well, it depends. The Dehancer plugin from DaVinci Resolve that I demonstrated today will set you back US $299 for a 1-year license. If film looks, color grading or stylizing video is your thing, it may well be worth it. So Dehancer does these things exceptionally well and will give you many more options than the host video editing software will. By way of example, a few years ago I paid a similar price for LR Timelapse, a software that works with Lightroom to make time-lapse videos. It does this one thing and it does it very well. Because I'm particularly interested in time-lapse photography and shoot it often, the price was well worth it to me and I've never regretted buying it. So Dehancer is available as a trial version which lets you try it out for free for a couple of weeks. Just be aware that it will apply a watermark to any footage that you render. My only real criticism of Dehancer is there doesn't seem to be a way to save your own presets or favorite settings. So that makes it a bit tedious to re-enter your favorite settings for things like film grain or bloom or things like that. I hope you found this review useful. I've included links to the software in the description below, and if you do decide to buy Dehancer, you can get a 10% discount by applying the coupon code I've included below in the description. So thanks for watching and see you in the next one.